Welcome to Turkish series Stars, the space where feelings and facts collide. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe, leave a like, and join our growing circle, because what we share here isn't just news, it's the pulse underneath the headlines. Tonight, it took one quiet sentence to restart a chapter everyone thought had been sealed for good. Alp Navras, who rarely strays from careful words and composed silence, finally spoke, and the room went still as he offered a line that felt less like gossip and more like confession. Between Alina and me, there are chapters no one ever got to read. Those words didn't simply float across the studio, they exploded across timelines. Within minutes, the internet became a furnace of theories, questions, and revived hopes from fans who never stopped believing that there was something unfinished between Alp Navras and Alina Boz. Trends formed without a single tag, and timelines flooded with edits and memories. It wasn't just a wave of nostalgia, it felt like a sleeping beauty of a story jolted awake by one carefully placed sentence. For months, both had stayed private, letting speculation burn itself out without adding fuel. Journalists tried to corner the truth, fans spun narratives, but neither side gave explicit answers. That changed when the interviewer asked Alp the question many had tiptoed around: would he ever work with Alina again? Alp's eyes took on that distant calm he is known for. "In our profession, I don't like to lock doors," he said with a soft half-smile. "But some doors, when they close, keep humming long after." That image, the lingering hum after a closing door, became the looped line of the week. It was replayed in clips, translated in captions, and discussed in comment threads. People close to the actor quietly suggested that Alp and Alina still exchange words now and then, but only far from microphones and flashes. "They communicate, just not for show," one source murmured. A few days before that interview, Alina posted a carefully framed photograph on Instagram with a single sentence beneath it: "Sometimes silence explains more than 1,000 sentences." The timing did not slip past anyone. Fans called it a conversation without noise, one post answering another, hearts finding a way to speak around the world's curiosity. In the same interview, when Alp was asked whether he still felt anything for Alina, he kept his voice even but let truth sit inside every syllable: "You don't erase a person who leaves their shape in your life. And sometimes distance is how love remembers itself." The studio air shifted. People could sense that this wasn't a celebrity dodging, it was a man peering back at a tender place that still lived inside him. Each time Alina's name was mentioned, he glanced down, his tone softened, and just once, there was a breath that said more than any paragraph could. The host pushed a little deeper. Did he regret any part of what they had? Alp didn't grandstand, didn't rehearse a perfect line. "Loving is never the mistake," he said simply. "Not daring to love would have been." The sentence hovered. No one rushed to fill the quiet it left behind. Even the presenter seemed to lean into the pause, realizing this conversation had slipped past PR and into something unarmored. Truth doesn't swagger. It stands, steady and plain. There was one more inquiry everyone had waited for, the rumor that they had crossed paths again, that maybe the distance was narrowing. Had Alp and Alina seen each other recently, away from eyes and expectations? Alp didn't feed the fire, and he didn't snuff it out either. He met the camera, and in a tone so low it felt private, said, "Some stories aren't safer when spoken. They keep breathing better inside the heart." Within minutes, that line became legend. It spiraled through feeds, appeared in subtitles across languages, and found its way into every entertainment portal you could scroll. On TikTok and beyond, fans paired his words with tender edits, interviews where they laughed, angles where they almost touched, those award nights where a glance seemed charged with everything unsaid. Comment sections filled with observations that blurred the line between performance and reality. Those who study gestures noticed the smallest things. How Alp's gaze drifted to the floor between answers, the way he briefly tapped his fingers against a modest silver pendant resting just beneath his shirt collar, the slight catch in his voice before he steadied it again. That pendant became its own subplot. Longtime followers recognized it as a piece linked to Alina in the early days when whispers first began, a tiny token exchanged quietly when cameras weren't scanning for signs. At a charity gala days later, a reporter asked him about it. Alp offered a soft smile that reached his eyes but gave nothing away. "Some keepsakes outlast the clock," he said, and the internet erupted all over again. Was it a breadcrumb? Was it just memory? Or a message that didn't need punctuation? Turkish series stars wants to know what you think. Does love really fade when two people still manage to speak in silence and symbols? Tell us in the comments, we'll be reading. Only days after Alp's words went viral, stories surfaced of a secluded industry gathering in Istanbul. Witnesses claimed both actors were there. They didn't huddle or pose or perform. But when their eyes found each other across a room buzzing with small talk and strategy, the air tightened. One attendee told a paper later, everything held its breath for a second. No one wanted to be the one to break that moment. That quiet encounter triggered another wave online. Fans went to work, stitching together old images, setting them against new rumors, and mapping the electricity that always seemed to run between them. Some argued that a single look could hold whole chapters of explanation. Others warned against reading too much into curated fragments. But the photos kept circulating, a still frame of her turning, a still frame of him noticing, a still frame where neither had to say a word. You didn't need dialogue to understand it. Sometimes, the lack of speech is its own loudness. The following day, Alina posted a story, a minimal video of a window and late afternoon light, a modest song threading through, and one sentence scrolled across the frame. Sometimes the last chapter isn't the conclusion. In minutes, her story was everywhere. To many, it felt like an answer, a line placed neatly beside Alp's, as if the two were building a page together in the only way they could. Comments poured in, comparing the rhythm of their words, aligning the timestamps, wondering if the timing was coincidence or choreography. People took sides, team reunion, convinced that this was the overture to a second act, and team closure, sure that both were simply signing off with grace. Yet even within the swirl, one thing stayed steady, their story refused to die. It breathed beneath the noise, a low pulse underneath the shouting. The journalist who sat across from Alp that day shared a detail off camera. During breaks, he didn't scroll or joke. He went quiet. He wasn't bored, he was somewhere else. It felt like he was replaying a very specific memory. That image, a man straddling what was and what might be, matched what millions sensed as they watched. Alp's openness didn't look staged. It didn't twitch with performance. It was unguarded in a way that makes even non-fans pause the clip and sit with themselves for a second. A prominent critic wrote later, "What we witnessed wasn't sentimentality, it was a stanza that never got its final line." By the time the interview wrapped, the internet had already caught fire. Video compilations titled with Alp's most unfiltered moments racked up views at the speed of rumor. People from different countries translated his words, dissected pauses, and dug into older press tours looking for a thread that had been there all along. But beyond those dissections, what remained is simple: two people once shared something too deep to vanish on command. Near the end of the program, Alp said one last line that felt like he was speaking to no one and everyone at once: real love doesn't vanish. It waits outside the door until it's called back in. It didn't demand agreement. It invited possibility. Maybe that's what pulled so many into the current, the sense that between memory and timing, there might be a space where love doesn't die, it simply bides its time. As the days passed, small details kept the conversation alive. A playlist Alina liked that featured a track she and Alp were once spotted humming along to in a behind-the-scenes clip. A photo of Alp at a cafe reading a novel about second chances. People hunted for meaning, and perhaps they found it because they wanted to. Perhaps they found it because it was truly there. Either way, a story that thrives in the quiet has learned to plant signals like breadcrumbs, each one subtle enough to deny and strong enough to feel. And so we circle back to where this began, a sentence spoken softly by a man who doesn't dramatize, and another shared by a woman who guards her privacy like a jewel. They did not make declarations. They did not announce beginnings or endings. They simply let the world peek at the seam between those two things. In that seam, there is longing. In that seam, there is restraint. In that seam, there is everything that makes a private life so hard to live in public. At a follow-up event, a journalist tried once more to pin down a yes or no. Alp offered something more tender than clarity. "I'm proud of what we had," he said. "If that's past, it's honored. If it has a future, it doesn't need witnesses yet." The line circled like a bird refusing to land, and people argued over its meaning the way they argue over a favorite ending of a beloved film. Did he confirm? Did he deny? Or did he, once again, leave the door barely ajar? Meanwhile, Alina remained true to form, elegant, measured, and never gratuitous. When asked in a magazine feature whether she believed in second chances, she didn't blink. "I believe in timing," she answered. "And in letting life choose its moment." For those who read between lines, it felt like a gentle nod. For those who don't, it was simply an adult truth from a woman who has always valued substance over spectacle. And maybe that's why this keeps living. Not because of scandal, but because both are careful with what matters. They protect it. They don't gift it to algorithms. They let it be, even if letting it be is the hardest choice. Sometimes the most dramatic move is restraint, sometimes the loudest sound is the quiet that follows a door softly closing, or softly opening. Thank you for being with us at Turkish Series Stars, where we try to look past the headlines and find the heartbeat in every story. If this touched you, leave a comment, subscribe, and keep the conversation respectful and alive. Tell us in the space below, do you think some loves are simply paused rather than gone? Or is it wiser to let silence guard what language can't safely carry? Until next time, keep listening for the meanings tucked between words, keep believing in timing, and keep standing with us at Turkish Series Stars, the place where feeling and truth meet in the middle.